It started with a knock, not at the front door, but inside the walls. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, coming from the bedroom where I slept. I thought I was imagining it at first, hearing things in the dead of night. You know how your brain plays tricks on you when you're alone in the dark, but this was real. I wish I had left right then. The house on Hollow Creek Road was exactly what I had been looking for. Big, cheap, and secluded. An old Victorian with a wraparound porch, sitting at the end of a long, narrow road surrounded by thick woods. I was fresh out of a breakup, and the idea of living alone in a place like that seemed perfect at the time. It would be quiet, it would be peaceful, it would be anything but that. The first few days were uneventful, if not a little eerie. The house had that musty old smell of places that had been abandoned for too long. Every step echoed through the empty halls, and at night, the creaks and groans of the wood settling made it feel alive in a way I wasn't used to, but I chalked it up to my nerves. A new place is always weird at first, especially one as isolated as this. But then came the knocks. The first time I heard them, I was lying in bed, drifting off. The sound was so faint, I wasn't sure I had really heard anything at all. Knock, knock, knock. Slow and steady, like someone was tapping on the other side of the wall right next to me. My eyes snapped open, but everything was still. It didn't happen again that night. The next night, it did. The same 3 knocks. Always slow, always deliberate. I sat up, scanning the room, waiting for something to happen, but nothing ever did. I got up, walked to the wall, even knocked back a couple of times like an idiot. Of course, there was no response. Still, I didn't sleep well that night, and the following day, that uneasy feeling stuck with me. By the 3rd night, I knew something was wrong. I woke up in the early hours of the morning to the same sound. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, it was louder, closer, like it was coming from the wall directly behind my head. I sat up, heart pounding in my chest, straining to listen, and then, as if in response, there was a new sound. A faint whisper, too soft to make out the words, but unmistakably human. I wasn't alone. I got up, flipping on every light as I went, trying to rationalize what was happening. Maybe the house had pipes running through the walls, or maybe some kind of animal had gotten in. That had to be it. Anything was better than thinking about the alternative, that someone, or something, was in the house with me. The next day, I did a thorough search of the place. I checked every wall, pulled back the old wallpaper, and even crawled into the attic, but I found nothing. No pipes, no animals, nothing that could explain the noises I'd been hearing. That night, the knocking didn't stop. It grew more frequent, more frantic, like whoever, or whatever, was behind the walls, was getting desperate. The whispers grew louder too. This time, I could make out a few words, though I wish I hadn't. Let me in. The voice was cold, rasping, and full of anger. My chest tightened, and for the first time, I felt truly afraid of what I couldn't see. I didn't sleep at all. By the 5th night, I was barely functioning. I'd been drinking coffee non-stop to stay awake, trying to make sense of what was happening. But no matter what I did, no matter how much I told myself, it wasn't real. The knocking and the whispers continued. Only now, they followed me throughout the house. I'd be in the kitchen, and I'd hear them coming from the walls. I'd be in the living room, and they'd start again. Knock, knock, knock. The whispers became voices. There were more of them now. I could hear them everywhere, calling my name, telling me to come closer, to listen. Sometimes I thought I could see shapes moving in my peripheral vision, dark figures just outside the reach of the light. I couldn't take it anymore. That night, I decided to stay awake again. But this time, I wasn't going to just sit there and listen. I was going to confront whatever was in the house. If it was all in my head, fine, but I needed answers. I sat in the living room with the lights on, gripping a flashlight and a kitchen knife, waiting. The knocking started around midnight, right on time. It was louder now, more aggressive, like someone was pounding on the walls. I stood up, heart hammering, and followed the sound. It led me to the hallway, just outside my bedroom. As I stood there, flashlight in hand, the knocking stopped. For a moment I thought maybe it was over. that whatever had been tormenting me had finally stopped. But then I heard it, a creak. I spun around, and there at the end of the hallway was a figure. It was tall, unnaturally tall, and its limbs were twisted in ways that defied logic. Its head was tilted at an odd angle, and its eyes, if they were eyes, were sunken into its face, glowing faintly in the darkness. My breath caught in my throat, and I froze, unable to move as the figure took a step toward me. The whispers returned, louder than ever, echoing through the hallway. The figure took another step, then another. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my ears, and ran to my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I sat there, back against the door, shaking. My mind raced, trying to figure out what I had just seen. It wasn't human, at least, not anymore, and it was coming for me. The knocking started again, louder than ever, this time coming from inside my room. I stared at the wall, terror creeping up my spine as the sound grew closer and closer. The whispers filled the air, and through the cacophony, I heard a voice, clear and cold. "Let us in." I scrambled to my feet and ran out of the house, not caring about the cold or the dark. I didn't stop until I was in my car, the engine roaring as I sped down the road, away from that cursed place. I never went back. I left everything behind. Furniture, clothes, the few boxes I had unpacked. None of it mattered. All I wanted was to be as far away from that house as possible. But even now, miles away, I can still hear the knocking. It's faint, but it's there. Every night, just as I'm about to fall asleep, I hear it. Knock, knock, knock. Sometimes if I listen closely enough, I can still hear the whispers too. They're waiting. If you made it this far, be sure to like and subscribe before you hear the knocking too.